Welcome to the new section, MySQL User Administration. Up till now, we have been using only the root account on the local host. And you might be wondering, when will we log in remotely as a non-root user? That time has come in this section. We will create our first DB account for Bob so he can log in remotely, either from a regular MySQL client or a newer MySQL shell or through a graphical client called MySQL Workbench. We will then talk about what is the with grant option, why a DBA should have this with grant option. We will talk about roles, what is the difference between roles and users. You will be surprised to see there is not a separate data dictionary for roles, but their definition also stores in the same MySQL.user data dictionary table. We will grant permissions to roles and then roles to users to make user administration easy to manage. We will see how to lock and unlock a MySQL account, how to create an expired account. So when the MySQL user log in, the account will be expired, the password will be expired. So he or she must change the password before continue. So this section is full of demos. So let's get started. Welcome back. So let's talk about MySQL permissions. Before I describe all these permissions, I just want you to understand two concepts. One is called authentication, and other is called authorization. Authentication means like if you want to authenticate against MySQL server or any other server that has a username and password. That is called authentication. Once you are authenticated, then based on your permissions, what are you authorized to do? So this is the authorization part. So authorization part deal with permissions, and permissions are actually privileges that is granted to you or granted to a user, in this case MySQL account, to perform some actions. What kind of action? It depends on the type of permissions the user has. In MySQL context, you will deal with almost all the time these kind of keywords and the permissions. The very first one I want you to understand is all. The keyword all mean all the permissions, and that permission could be alter, drop, create, execute, insert, show, anything. So if you want to give permission, all the permission on a particular object, database object, so you use word all. Then other kind of permissions are alter, drop, create, typically used on databases, tables, indexes, and etc. Drop permission normally used on database, drop table, drop index, drop user, like this. Execute, if you want to execute a program. In MySQL term, we call this store procedures. If you want to have some user execute a store procedure, he or she needs the execute permissions. Similar ways on those are the object level permissions. If you want to give the data like row levels, you can have insert, update, delete. We can also have permission called rename, and asterisk is after that. Asterisk mean on all the objects. For example, a database has 50 tables. Instead of listing all those permissions on all those 50 tables, we can say that give her whatever permission, all or alter on database dot asterisk mean all the tables under this database. There are some read-only permissions also, like a select. You only want to give someone select permission or show permission. So these are considered as read-only permissions. They do not make any data changes. There are some replication-related permissions. Like if you want to start a replication, they used to call replication slave. Now they have changed the term to replication replica. So if you want to stop replication, you need to have specific permissions. All these permissions that we discussed about, we use grant keyword. Grant keyword is grant this permission, grant this permission. So we will stop here, and in the next lesson, I will talk about with admin option, and then after that, we should be ready to create our first non-root DBA user. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. So before we create our first non-root DBA user that can log in from anywhere, we need to talk about with grant permission, with grant permission option. With grant option is a clause that is used when a user is being created. If you want to have user the ability to give other users any permission that this user has, then you need to provide this clause. Now, typically, DBAs are the users who create other users, so they should have the ability to give permission to others. But sometimes DBA are given full admin rights, but they are not given the permission to give others the rights. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention that whenever you create a DBA user, you specify this clause. So now we will create a DBA user called Bob. We will grant all privileges on all the objects with grant option. So this will make Bob the super user, like a root user with the ability to log in remotely. So let's see this in action. Welcome back. So let's create our first non-root DBA user, DBA MySQL account. The first thing is we need to log in, and always before you run any command, see if there is a help available. Help create user. this is a good help. We can just follow along this and we will create our user. We start right from here. So let's copy this, create user, if not exist, copy this, Control V, remove these brackets because this was optional, but let's put this, create user, if not exist, username, right? Create user, username, user, whatever username, and then we say with the auth option, let's copy this guy. We don't want to say a random password, or with the auth plugin, we want to give our own password. So let's say Control V. By the way, here they did not mention, but we can even put this in single quotes. That is also okay. If you don't want to, that is also okay. Plus, remember in one of the previous lessons, we talk about remote versus local user. We can say here, is this user only allowed to log in from localhost or a specific IP, right? Or you want to say no, from any location. So normally, typically a DBA should be from any location. So either you give this percentage or you don't, is the same thing. If you do not provide any option here, it will assume that it will be created to log in from any location. So let's do this thing, identified by, let's give Bob a very secure password. Let's say PASSWORD123. So this is for this just demo purposes. And then what else we have? We already done this. We already this. The same thing either first, second, and third. And then we already give this. We do not want to say TLS option, no remote resources option quota. We want to have this unlimited privileges. Password options. Okay, let's copy all this. What this means, let's see that. It says password expire either after these many days or null or default. So since it is a DBA, we don't want to have this password expire ever, unless DBA wants to change his password. Because if he forgot the password, then it will be a problem. Password, but it is up to you. If you can want to have 180 days, 30 days, 60 days, it's up to you. I'm just doing this for now. Let's say expired never. And then what else we left? I think we've done this. Then the lock option, account lock, account unlock. I'll say account make it unlock. So let's try that. So create user, if not exist, Bob, identify by this, password expire ever, account unlock. Your password does not satisfy the current policy requirement. Okay. So what we can do is we can make it more stricter. Control C, Control V, and let's do, what can we do? We can make it @ password. Let's try this. Wow, this worked. So, oh, I need to remember this password. So you guys need to remember this. If I forget, please send me a message. This is the password, P@SSW and 0D. Okay, once we created the user, we need to grant permission. So let's say grant all privileges on *** to Bob. If you remember, we say we want to give with grant option. Grant all privileges on *** mean all the privileges on all the objects to Bob with grant option. Beautiful. So once we did that, we need to flush the privileges so that the grant tables can reactivate right away. So flush privileges. Let me copy this and paste here. Perfect. So we have created a user called Bob. We gave Bob all the privileges with the grant option, and we can even check it. Show grants. This is the option for any user. So show grants for, let's say, Bob. These are all the permissions given to Bob. So Bob has right there what I was talking to you. So Bob has no ability to log in from any location. It has all the permissions. It has with grant option clause. So Bob is ready to log in the next lesson. Welcome back, folks. So in this lesson, I will show you how to connect to a remote database host. I will use 3 different tools to connect to a remote database host. The number one, we will use regular MySQL client that I have installed on my local machine. And then we will use the program called MySQL Shell. And then finally, we will use a graphical user interface tool called MySQL Workbench. So we will verify after login that the status of the current user, it should say that it is connected to server as a remote through a TCP IP mechanism and not through socket file. So this is my local machine. So let's first start with the MySQL, regular MySQL client. So MySQL, as we did before, let's say host is equal to, I think my host, since it is a remote host, I have this IP address. In your case, you will have you will be given your database server name or maybe the ID. So in my case, this is the, suppose that this is the production MySQL server, and then we will say user. And remember, our first DBA user is Bob and dash dash password. You have the ability to type password here, but I would recommend do not do this, because what happen if someone, you are in your job and someone can log into your workstation and they can check the history, and this will be clear in plain text. So we will always do like dash dash password, so it can prompt you for the password on the command line. So once you hit enter, password, I think we remember password PASSW0RD123. Beautiful. So we logged in through MySQL client. Let's see, select, we can verify, select user. User is logged in as a Bob, and this is my local IP address. Since I have defined this DB, I can log in from anywhere, so it has no restrictions. Also, if we check -S, which is the status, the status is saying that the current user is this, ID is this, and look at this one. The connection is made to this DB server via TCP IP. There is nowhere it says that we are using the MySQL socket that we showed you in the demo in one of the previous lessons. The server has been up for 8 hours and 22 minutes. The port is open 3306. So this is really good one exercise where we connected through MySQL client. So let me log off from here. Now let's do through MySQL shell. And for you, I have this in the internet, I have this GitHub repo page. MySQL DBA course is the repo, and MySQL shell is the page. You can refer to this. I made this for you for MySQL shell. Want to get help? You want to run any program? These are the usage of examples. And then you can, if you want, you can have a JavaScript mode. You can have a Python mode. And let's try with the SQL mode. So this is the syntax. We will just copy this, and we will paste here. And instead of prod 01, let me see what is my DB ID, DB host IP address. That will come here. And then we are saying that start MySQL shell in a SQL mode. And URI is the uniform, the address relocator is the username @ I could have given here colon password, but I don't want to. I want it to prompt me. And we are saying that the server is running on listening on port 3306. And let's connect to world database. It says that please provide the password for Bob, same password. Hit enter. It says save password for Bob. Yes, no, default is no. Let me say no. I don't want to save it. And right there, you see the difference. This is a MySQL shell. I am using the older version because my Mac is old. So in your case, hopefully you will have a latest version. So one of these days, I'll buy a new laptop, new Mac, and then I will have this MySQL shell latest version. So anyway, MySQL shell, it indicates the IP address of the database host, the port where the database host is listening. The connection is through SSL, secure socket layer. Database is the world, and then the prompt SQL mean this is a SQL mode. We can test it with a simple command, show databases. We can say select user, and we can also do status. Sorry, \S. So right there, exactly the same information. This time the current schema is Word, and everything else is the same. So this is the second way to connect to the same remote host. So the third way is, this is the first time I will be showing you a graphical user interface. Let me copy the IP address. So I have this MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench, because Microsoft is known for graphical user interface clients. So I just, for some reason, I used to use that Microsoft also. So this is the MySQL Workbench. This is the main page. Again, this is the older version. I hope you will have a newer version. So for here, so we will say MySQL connection. So we will click the plus sign. This is the indication. This is the first screen. It tells you that what is the host you want to try to connect. In our case, this is the host connection name. Let's say this is a prod connection. The port is 3306. This time the user is Bob. And I don't want to give default schema. I could say world, but let's try the connection. And then it will ask for password, PASSWORD23. Okay. A successful MySQL connection was made. Beautiful. So we say, okay, the connection is made. Right there is Bob's login. You double click here and it says that it is opening the SQL editor. So now this is the longest lesson I have recorded. I don't want you to bore you with this one. So I will stop right here. And in the next lesson, we will explore what this client can do for you. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. So once you log into the MySQL through MySQL Workbench, this is the window you have seen. So quickly, just to show you a different navigational pans on the top, like any other tool, it is a menu. You can create a new database, you can create a user, you can create a table, and so on. On the left-hand side, it is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4 different sections. The very first one is management. instance, performance, and the schemas. Schema is actually the other name of the databases. What are the databases that I have access to? They are listed here. And in the management, if you click on the server status, this will give you an overall status of the service. What is the prod is the one, remember we made this connection. So it tells you what is the host name, where is the socket file, under which port it is running, what is the version of this. Very useful information. So very first time, whenever someone say log into the system and see what is happening, this is the information. First of all, we look at what is the version and where is the socket file and what is the the port number and for how long it has been running. After that, we have features available on this server. We have server directories, very known directories, and replication slave. If it has any configured, right now not, but in the upcoming lesson in the replication section, we will have a replication set up here and SSL information. What kind of the key pair, the SSL self-generated certificate files this server. These are PEM files. If you click on the client connections, all the connections that have been made so far to this server, they will show both foreground and background. One of the suggestions if I will make is that normally what we do two things. One is we hide background threads and we also hide sleeping connections. And also we change from 5 seconds to let's do 10 seconds, auto refresh this 10 seconds. And if you want to see, let's say we logged in as a Bob, you click here and then you click show details. On the right hand side, it show you what this user is doing, what of the command is doing, how much time he has spent so far. So if we see that this user is giving a problem or blocking, we normally come here. If this user happens to doing blocks, and then what we do, we simply select this and then we say kill connection, or do not kill the connection, just kill this query. So this, you can see that the interface is very helpful. These are the client connections. It tells you how many total connections so far since this MySQL server has been running, how many connections he has made, this server has been made, how many clients were aborted. All this information is in here. If you click on user and privileges, these are the users these are the MySQL accounts that have been created on this server. Right now, if you remember, we only created Bob, root came as default. These three are accounts. These are disabled by default, used by system if they are even enabled. So this is the user information. You can click on Bob and it gives you all the information. This Bob can log in from any host. We can change password here. We can expire his password. We can see that what are the account limits, how many queries, what are the resources this user can use, and any administrative roles. Remember I show you with ground option right there. If I uncheck, see what happened here. If I uncheck this, it will remove couple of like DBA and DBA manager rights. So we don't want to do that. But here, this is a graphical way of granting the permissions. We can do that. Then all the system variables in one of the lesson I show you the global and the session, they're all here and they are actually all categorized. It is very easy. If you want to see global variables, these are the system global variables. If you want to see session or the status variable, the current, this is this list. So this is very useful. You please go through these and you will find very useful information through these variables. The data export and data import, we may touch this, or actually we will have assignments on these two in when it will come to MySQL backup and recovery section. Instance, it tells you when this instance was started, server logs and the option files. If they say that if I need to enable this, I have to configure this SSH remote session with the server. Performance, we can see that this is the overall performance of the MySQL server. These are in a vertical way: network status, MySQL status, InnoDB status. And the performance reports, if quickly you want to see, you have this graphical, like for example, let's say how much is the total memory of this server. It tells you this is the total number of bytes this server is running with the memory. So this information is very useful. It is your preference. You want to use graphical user interface to manage MySQL, it's up to you. All these tools are there for you. It is actually really depends on a DBA to DBA. Some DBAs don't like graphical interface, some do. So I just wanted to give you just the introduction, the tip of it. It is in front of you. You can actually install this and you can play around with this. If you find anything that you do not understand, please reach out to me and I will do my best to answer you in time. So this was the overall 3 tools that I wanted to cover. I just wanted, like I said, that I just wanted to give you, these are the tools. Next, you can use help with any of the tool and sky is the limit. You can explore the way you want to. And I will see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and create some regular users using this MySQL Workbench tool. And then I will use the regular MySQL client also and see how this will work. So as a DBA, we should know that what the users look like, how to expire their password, how to unlock them, what the MySQL.user table look like. So let's start with this one. First, let me do through command line and then I will show through a click button. So let's say create user. Let's call user John, identify by, let's say the same famous password that I use so we don't get error. And let's do password expire. What this means is that this will allow this John user to log in with this password, but right after this password will be expired. So normally we as a DBA, we are given this task that create this user. So we create users with the password, whatever initial password we do, and then we give them the password and we say that you log in with this one, but then you will be forced to change the password. So this is the right way to giving them. So not let them know that maybe they say that we already know their password, but now when we say password expired, then they will change the password the way they want to. So identified, right? Identified, no? Yes. So create user John identified by this password expired. So if you can look at this, it says that run. If I would have like 10 commands here, if I will click here, all these commands will run. The next one is only run where your cursor is. So since I have only one command, so I will just click cursor here and I will say run. The bottom is the output pane. It says that green on the most left mean this was success. Otherwise it will be a red. It means failure. So let's go back to user and privileges and see if user John has been created. John has been created. He has the ability to log in from any host. This is the default password, what we gave, and it already says password expired. Otherwise this would be enabled. So password is expired, and this is where John can be deleted. John can be, set all these privileges for him. So let me try to log in John from here. If we, right there. This is MySQL shell, but let me do through this. Instead of Bob, let me do quickly John. And the password is same password. It should say login. Let me say show databases, and it should say you must reset your password using alter user statement. So this means that now this user can select its own password, and that will be alter user. What is that? Username identified by, and you can choose whatever password you want. What I'm doing. Sorry. So, oh, wow. Is that changed? Well, the password is changed now. If I come back here and I will refresh, we should have refresh, and we can change password here also. So this was a quick way of creating password through here. The same way, let me delete this, and we can create from here. This should be a delete. You can delete account or user here, and then you can say add account. The same way we can say John, and we will authentication type is, I have a lesson upcoming there. I will have a detail about caching SHA-2 password versus MySQL native. So don't worry about now. Right now, just say standard, and host, that password we pay, and then we say, let me actually create one quickly. Okay, confirm password. This is another way creating through this. It tells you that the password strength is green, mean this is acceptable password. If I say apply, the user has been created. So you got the idea. So you have this tool in front of you. Either you create from here or you create from here. So I will see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. Let's give John some permissions, and so we can test the permissions also. So either you can use MySQL Workbench or you can use the MySQL client tool. So let's try first here. So I will show you the limitation we have here, and then we will try to create a SQL statement. So I selected John. I have this login information. We already said account limits. If we want to restrict John with the number of queries, or what are the number of updates and inserts you can do. For now, we'll just leave them unlimited. Administrative roles. If we want to make John a DBA, user admin, whatever. Now, since John is just a regular user, so we will use schema privileges. So the schema mean, I told you earlier, it means database. So right now, John doesn't have anything. So I will click on add entry. It says that, do you want to give permission to John to all schemas, or you want to give schema matching patterns, or you want to give a specific schema? So let's say select schema. I want to give it to example word, and then you hit OK. And you can see that the schema is word, and these are the privileges we can give. So let's say I say select, insert, update, delete. You say the user John will have the following access right to the schema world. And one thing you notice that it means insert, update, delete writes on every table in the world schema. There is no option for a table that I want to only give insert, delete to one table, but select only to one table. So this is one of the drawbacks. Maybe this version is old. Maybe in the newest version, they have a more granular permissions. Like I should be able to select a table. Like these permissions are only pertain to a certain table. So these are the permissions you can assign from here. So let me actually delete this entry, and I'm not doing anything here. We have already, I'm not making any changes. So let me actually come here. And we already done this. Let me create permissions here. So we say grant, let's say select, insert, update, delete on world dot. Let's say, do we have continents? We have continents. So let's say on continents to John, right? So grant, select, insert, update, delete on continents, but I'm not giving any other permission. So my cursor is here and I say the second one, run this one. Green, main, the permission has been granted. So what we can do is we can say show grants for John. So my cursor is here. We say show grants for John. Right there it says John has the usage. You can say use word, select, insert, update on word or asterisk. Actually I did not on the other side in the user privileges I did not say reward. Oh, reward. Let me actually delete and I say apply instead of reward. So now if I run this command, let me see, we should have only one. So that was another gotcha in the tool. So right now John has only this statement. So let me log in as John and see, did we not? Oh, right there. So John is trying to connect with the password. Okay, show databases, use world. Okay, show tables, only the table that we grant permissions. That's what I wanted to show you. So you can actually control the permissions. These are the permissions I was talking about. Let me see if John, definitely John should have permission to these number of rows in this table right there. And also we can say select start. So this is how you control the permissions. So I think that should be enough for you to get an idea. So these are the permissions we can grant at the table level, at the database level. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. Two things I quickly want to show you, then we will move to the next topic. One is we as a DBA, we keep all the users list or report in handy that which user has been logged or their password has been expired and which authentication plugin they are using. And then the other thing is how quickly if one employee is leaving, how we lock their account, or if we are given this task that can you please lock this account or unlock this account. So these two things quickly I want to show you. The very first one is, let me start a new SQL, and that is select start from MySQL.user. Let me see how it look like. So we only want, let's say we want host user, then we want, what else we got here? Okay, we want right there plugin. I have a lesson coming up what these plugins are, what this mean. Very important. Authentication string, password expired, and then I think there is another one. Let's do account locked, account LOCKED, account locked from MySQL user. And normally we do, let's do order by user. So let me run this command. So this list is very handy for us as a DBA. We can easily say that which account has been locked. So this account info schema has been locked, MySQL.session has been locked, MySQL sys has been locked, the member I show you. So these two users, this is not, account is not locked. So for example, I got this request that we want to lock John's account. So it is simple. Simply I come here, I will say alter user John account account lock. Let's see if this works. Green, it means account is locked. Let's say if I run the upper one, it says John account is locked. Yes. So let John log out and log back in. Do you think it will work? John will be able to log in? No. Access denied because account is locked. So I can quickly come here and I can say account unlock. Yeah, unlock. Green. Let's John try one more time. John is able to log in. So these two things are quite handy, locking, unlocking, and also keeping the list of all the users. So I'll see you in the next lesson. SQL. Why? Because I am getting this error, authentication plugin, cache in SHA2 password cannot be loaded. What this really means is that any tool, let's say they are using any application that is still using a legacy old tool, and every tool has a connector, a DB connector that connects to the, in this case, MySQL server. So quite possible that connector has not been upgraded to use this plugin, even though this plugin come in a server form and also in the client form. So there are still some tools that are still using MySQL native password as authentication plugin. So the workaround is you as a DBA need to go back and alter the user to use MySQL native password plugin. So this is the command you have to use to bypass this error. Now starting in MySQL 8, in the MySQL D, it is in the configuration file @c/my.conf. You can specify default authentication plugins in caching SHA password, or if you do not, it is already built in. It is default anyway. So it means that either we say create user John with this plugin by password, or we say create user John by this password. Skipping this line is the same thing. So I just wanted to give you the difference between two, which one you should use and why you should sometime need to go back with the MySQL native password because of this error. So I will see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this lesson, we will learn about MySQL roles. Roles are nothing but named collections of privileges. Like what this means is that we really gather together all the permissions and name this permission set something, and that will become a role. You have to have global create role or create user privileges to create a role. Whenever you create a role and role is created, that will become a database event, and this will be logged in a binary log. A role when created is locked, very important concept, and I will tell you in a bit why. And it is assigned a default authentication plugin, not the MySQL native, but the other one, the caching SHA2 password. No password is given to a role, so the authentication string is empty. So there is a difference between an authentication string being empty and null. And this is very important to understand. If I will tell you to find all the roles, so you need to find from MySQL.user where authentication string is empty. Roles are considered as users in the MySQL.user system table. What really this means is that is the difference, that roles are actually like users, but you normally and generally, you create them as a logged. You do not log in as a role. You log in as a user. So you assign role to user so that user can log in using those roles. The roles are under the hood or a permission set or a named collection. The syntax is very easy, like any other database object. Create role, if not exist, reader, writer, admin. What this really means is that you can create more than one role in one line. Now, here come a little assignment for you. There are actually two assignments. This one is the easy one. I want you to find all the roles that has already been defined in your database. You go there. I already told you the hint. Roles have no password. Roles are locked by default. Roles are also in the MySQL.user system table. So please find all the roles. Then I will also show you how to find them, but I want you to actually take care of this assignment. The second assignment is you want to do this with our junior DBA Bob. And that assignment is I want you to create 3 roles: reader, writer, and admin. And then I want you to create 3 users: DB_reader, DB_writer, and DB_admin. Then I want you to give permission to roles. And the reader role will have a permission select on continents table of our famous world example database. Writer role will have insert, update, and delete on continents table. And admin role will have all the permissions on all the tables in the world database. So then what you need to do is you need to grant reader role to DB reader, writer role to DB writer, and admin role to DB admin. Bob is going to do this assignment, but I want you to please take care of this assignment. If you will do this assignment, it will be a lot easier to grasp the knowledge of a role. So let's see how you do it, and then at the end, we will compare your work with Bob. Thank you. I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. So how did you do that? I'm 100% sure that you have done it correctly because it was not very difficult. But just in case, just to recap this, so we will see how Bob did that. So by the way, I have created this link to this file in the resource section of this lesson. So I will just follow along this one. So if you have done exactly like this way or some other way, that is okay, but we will just go through this one. So the first step is let's create reader, writer, and DB admin roles. So simply I'll copy, paste. Then I will do the permissions to roles. Nice. Then we will check the role permissions just to make sure. This was an optional step. And then we will create users. You could have given any password. I'm just giving this random 8-digit password. And then once the user has been created, then we will assign the roles to users. Perfect. And then finally, this was also optional, but remember in one of the previous lesson, we say that do the flush privileges whenever you grant permissions or grant permissions. Yes. So copy this and we will paste there. Okay. So now the first exercise was to find all the roles. So I will do is I will say first select user host, user, let's say host, let's do plugin authentication string from MySQL.user. So after I get all the list, I will say that if I want to find only the roles, I will say where the authentication is empty. This is the empty string. So these are all your roles. And it says that this is a role normally. It's a general practice that we create role with a capital letter just to distinguish between user and a role. The other thing you have seen, the authentication string is empty. And the other one is, maybe I missed that. I know you would not have missed that one. And that is the account locked. That should be in Y also. Account locked. I misspelled it. Sorry about that. ACC right there. So this is the indication. These are all the roles. Well, thank you very much for completing this assignment, and I will see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. So this is the time again. At the end of this section, we will ask Bob how is he doing and what is the knowledge he has gained in this section. So this section was mainly about MySQL user administration. And Bob says that now Bob can create a non-root DBA user with the full permissions, and he can log in from anywhere, and he knows the anywhere mean %sign. And also Bob now understand if him as a DBA needs to give privileges to other users with the permissions, he needs to have this with grant option clause when DBA user was created. He knows the difference between a role and a user. He knows that the role is actually just a permission set. We gather permissions and make this a set and call this set a role, or we call this a named collection. Bob can lock and unlock any MySQL account. Bob can see that if a user has password expired, Bob can make a user password expire when created with a temporary password, so the user can change their password when the very time they log in. Bob knows that all this user and role informations are recorded in the MySQL.user system table. And Bob says that it is a general recommendation that you don't log in as a role, but you log in as a user. So by default, MySQL does this for you. Whenever we create a role is locked by default with no password. Bob is very much aware of the authentication plugins that MySQL provide for the password authentication, and those are MySQL native password and caching SHA-2 password. But MySQL native password is the old way of authenticating, and the new way and the recommended way is caching SHA-2 password. So I hope Bob has gained enough knowledge that he can proceed to the next section. So let's see you in the next section.